Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome, and thank you very much for joining me on this kind of a guerrilla edition of the Halcyon show, because I had no idea it was going down up until about half an hour before I started recording with our guest, and I couldn't not take the chance. I've been so insanely excited to talk to him. So let me add an introduction, because again, due to the nature, I didn't have time to put together a proper intro, and I also didn't have a chance to usher him out of the interview. So you're going to see me again pop up at the end of the show to do some social media plugs and to make sure you know where to find him. But intros first. On this edition, it's rather fitting that we have a guerrilla-style interview with journalist and reporter Jake Hanrahan. He has forged a career pathway through unconventional means in order to pursue a creative and editorial position he refuses to compromise. A man whose pursuit of stories and news that delve into the darker, more violent, yet morally complex topics and aspects of our culture has earned him a reputation as a fearsome reporter and someone who maintains a sharp moral focus on what he believes to be the most important aspect of any story, the people these stories are about and the inherent humanity within them. He is a self-taught freelance journalist. His work has been published in The Guardian, Esquire, Rolling Stone and Wired. He has worked for Vice News and later HBO as an on-screen reporter and producer, working in places such as Syria, Iraq, Ukraine, Kurdistan and Palestine. But in 2018, most importantly, he founded the grassroots independent media platform Popular Front, where he presents a source of news and documentaries that are head and shoulders above anything else you'll find in the genre media space. He is an insanely nice man, and indeed so generous with the very limited time he had. So, on that note, I am insanely proud to present my interview with Mr. Jake Hanrahan. I hope you enjoy it. I have conversations like the one we're about to have all the time with people, and you're the first person I've ever come across on a popular media platform that spoke like that. And what I was shocked by was how refreshing it was, even though I hear it all the time. But it's not represented all the time, because you don't. Because here's the thing, man. I would categorize you as a no BS kind of person, who a lot of people would sum up as being very. There's a force to you. There's a real purpose to the way you say things and the way you articulate things and the things you cover. But when you actually break down what you say, sorry.
It's called being an arsehole.
No, but what it is you actually listen to what you're saying. There's nothing extreme about what you're saying.
No.
You don't look at both sides and go, right, that one. You go, right, well, you're both kind of wrong. So here's where I stand. And it's a pragmatic yet realistic take on the world that's not seasoned by anyone trying to make it more along a certain agenda line that fits a narrative. And that's weird to me, because that is not the narrative that's pushed more often. So I guess my first question, and this is ironic given we're about to have a conversation, do we talk about things too much? Is it gotten to the point where we're talking for the sake of talking rather than doing for the sake of doing?
That's actually, for a second I thought, what the hell are you talking about? But I get what you mean, yeah. I think meant you and me, as like, we've only just met. Yeah, no, I get what you mean. I think, yeah, I kind of get what you mean. I think we talk things into existence a little bit.
Right.
You know, I think there's, especially media tend to be very Twitter front facing sometimes, you know, and it's just, most people, you know, you'll see like the craziest people on either side of the political spectrum, whatever, left, right, center, nutters everywhere on Twitter. And I think people are generally not actually like that. I mean, there might even be things you'll see someone say online and you're seeing the worst, most frustrated, you know, less thought out side of them. And if you kind of contain that little bit, you can make them look really bad. But I get on with people, you know, where I live and met people that I'm sure if I saw them online, I'd thoroughly dislike them. But that's not necessarily who they are. It's just some, you know, my mate was saying the other day that his aunt has got into all this like mad conspiracy theories. And she's lovely, but I'm sure if you saw he showed me what she was saying and we were laughing, we were like, fuck, you know, she's gone mad. And he actually said to me, he said, God, it's such a shame, but I love her, it's fine, it's my aunt. It's like, yeah, generally that's how people get on. And I think when you're in the media space, it amplifies into like, look how bad this person is, how could you ever associate with them? condone it. I mean, obviously there's boundaries. Obviously, if you were saying some racist shit online, you're a scumbag, and I don't want to associate with you. But I'm not talking like we said, extreme side of things. I'm just talking about things where people say things flippantly out of frustration, sometimes silliness, or they've been sucked into, some corner of the internet, and I don't think it always represents who they are, And
Right.
to answer your question, I think sometimes, yeah, we do talk about things a little bit too much in the sense of it's not that relevant. Like I have a lad at the Thai boxing gym I go to, and he's a nice lad, and one week he's talking about, oh, the aliens is this and that, or the next week it's, oh, they're putting a chip in you, and then the next week he's like, oh no, I read about that. I'll say to him, mate, go and read this, or and he'd be like, oh, I read about that. You're right, like that was wrong. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if you wanted to focus on what he was saying each week and talk that into a big thing, it'd be a laughing stock every week. But he's just silly, It's not that deep. There is things where it is a problem. Don't get me wrong. I think overall there's a real issue with various strange things creeping into the zeitgeist, particularly I would say in working class communities, which is being heavily ignored by certain facets of the media, or it's being only focused on when it's a bad thing, and then
Right.
it's like, the typical, oh, let's just villainize all those people. Let's not actually look at why maybe they're focusing on that. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I think sometimes yes, but then sometimes no. I think we may be talking about the wrong things too much. We're focusing on, well, my answer is in direct relation to the politics thing we were just talking about, just as we kind of like came on. But in general, I think there's never too many things to talk about. I just think we should focus on something else sometimes,
And that was going to be my next question, because I think one of the things that
Mm.
I notice a lot, and I'm not sure you maybe come across this, because you cover a lot of topics that I know people would be perfectly happy to pretend don't happen,
Yeah.
or they don't want to confront aspects of the human experience that they feel like they are tacitly approving by their ignorance of it, i.e., violent conflict, the more vulgar aspects of our fandom, and things along that nature. So my question is, how do you sort of how do you avoid the cynical nature of someone that might be immersed in that world, where it's like, man, everyone's fucking degenerate, everyone's fucking evil, everything's, because you don't strike me as that. You still strike me as the person that can come back to that place of, but this isn't who they are. This is something they're doing or something they're saying because they're in a moment, or they're in a moment in history. How do you bring it back and retain this level-headedness when you're covering things or when you're expressing things? Because it's something that, look, people get roped in, like you say, they latch onto something that they just feel speaks to them sometimes, even though when you break it down, you're like, I don't understand why you believe this. It doesn't seem to make sense on the face of it.
Ooh, I mean, I would say I am cynical, very much so, but in different ways, maybe. I'm very cynical of, oh, let's all get together, and if enough people power is in place, it will change. I mean, the times for that, I mean, I think there's some truth to that, but I just believe that the time for that is kind of past. We live in this highly mass surveilled state, and through various means, people have become very kind of docile to actual change. People would rather do it for attention or to be a part of a group, as opposed to actually maybe we can push this change through. So I'm cynical in terms of that. I think maybe because I've seen real action taken in different parts of the world, and I know that it's not cheerful. It's very horrible, actually. Unfortunately, like, political violence does have to happen in some places, and I'm not saying I condone it, but if someone is like, right, we're going to murder all of you lot because you're of this ethnicity or of this, idea or whatever, uh, what do you do? Get killed, or do you fight back?
Right.
It's like, I said to someone the other day, someone I was hearing, someone kind of, I don't want to say condoning colonialism, but kind of on this side of like, well, they shouldn't have done this. I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I said, you cannot condone colonialism and then be against the resistance to it. That is simply doesn't work. You can't say, no, it's okay to go in there, steal everything, kill them, and then take over their land, and then be annoyed that then they go, hang on, we don't want that. We're going to fight back. It's just, so I think I think in that sense, maybe I become very cynical when I hear one side of one thing and one side of the other, because I feel like often people are just trying to pick a kind of point of view to project so they can be associated with a certain idea. But anyway, back to your question. I think on the other side of it, where I don't feel the cynicism. I would say it's not that I'm not cynical. I'm just not dramatic. I feel like I try not to be dramatic, and I grew up around certain people. I grew up around certain environments, and nothing crazy or anything, but just meet all different people, and you meet what would be considered bad lads, and like if they were in the CERN, I'm sure they'd folk. I mean, I've seen people actually, get in trouble, and it's actually got to a point where it's ended up in quite like a more broadcastable thing, and you see a side and the way it's projecting, you think, I know that guy, he ain't that bad, like he's all right, and like someone was saying something about, I was at like Popular Front, my platform, we screened a documentary with football hooligans, anti-fascist football hooligans, but football hooligans nonetheless, violent people. And some people were like, it's really bad you did that, and you didn't even condone it, and you were like, and I was just like, man, like I don't see it like that, I don't see it. They're bad. I mean, they're really lovely, nice people, and they helped us out a lot, and they want to go and have arranged fights. They're not hooligans that tear apart the street or anything. No, they're going to have arranged fights quietly in fields with people that are usually very nasty right wing. It's up to them, and same with the other lads that they fight. Like, it's up to them if they want to do that. So I don't see it like that, and I see things more as I have very strict, things and morals that I believe in, and I don't feel like people doing certain things, like obviously everyone can go too far one way or another, but I just feel like if someone is engaged in a certain thing, it doesn't necessarily violate what I think is right or wrong. But I think a lot of what people see as right and wrong. Sorry, I'm really not really explaining this well, because I'm trying to think of it myself. But I think a lot of what people see as right or wrong, it's kind of just based on dramatics,
right? It's not it's based on degrees. That's the point.
Yeah,
it's black and white, right and wrong, rather than
right.
This is not as simple as right or wrong. This is, like you say, anti-fascist hooliganism. That's almost an oxymoronic state of being, because
it is and it isn't.
Exactly. It's not. The point is, it's not simple. It's not. You can't. They're bad. End of story. It's right. Well, I suppose in of themselves, but in a vacuum, everything can be cast as good or bad. But we don't exist in a vacuum. We exist in a wider ecosystem.
What is good and bad?
Exactly.
I mean, I don't see those hooligans. People say, oh, they're so violent. Okay, well, do you know what's the best, most viewed thing on Netflix? True crime. So are those guys bad because they quietly go and act out violence between people that also want to act out violence together? And often it's for getting out various frustrations or building character or whatever reason they want to do this. Are they any worse than all of the people that basically contribute to like very lurid details of true crime being the #1 spot on Netflix? I don't think they are. And I have nothing wrong with it. I have nothing against true crime, but I'm not lambasting it and saying people that like it are wrong any more than I'm saying hooligans are wrong, and it's not to, I don't want to get into the territory. It's like, well, it's all like levels of gray. It's not. There are things that are wrong and bad and disgusting, and I have very strong opinions on what should be happening to them kind of people, but it's very extreme cases. I feel I don't feel like in everyday life it's so quick to flip like that. Like you see homeless people, and it's unbelievable in this country how people are so unbelievably lacking in empathy towards people like that. Like, oh, look at him, scumbag. I don't know how you look at someone homeless and see what a bad person. They, to me, people that think that far more grotesque than a football hooligan. Personally, that's what I see. So, and it's really not an uncommon thing to be like, oh, look at him, a fucking bum. Oh, fuck him, don't give him any money. And then even the other side of it, which is almost more twisted, the people that are like, well, don't give them money, give them food. You don't give with a fucking condition. You give and you give, and I just find like that to me is more twisted and less honest. I think that's it. It comes down to honesty. Like, that to me is less honest than someone that goes, yeah, I really enjoy fighting and I like doing it in a specific way, and I have political views and they have opposing views, so we're going to meet up and we're going to travel across the world to fight each other. Like, I just feel like that's a lot more honest than these people that try and project this morale into the world. And you know, talking about hooligans, they have a very, I've heard them chant before, like, no one likes us, we don't care. And I think that's a lot more honest than someone that's like, I'm good, I'm the good one, you know, and we need to clean up the streets and all of that kind of stuff. I don't know, man. I see it a lot differently. And I guess my point is, my view of like what is what is the line to be crossed is very different perhaps to what other people say. And I'm not saying that everyone that sees that homeless person and perhaps says that is evil, but I think they're thoroughly disturbed to have that lack of empathy. I find it very disturbing that someone can have that lack of empathy. These people freeze to death in winter, you know.
I mean, I can go one further.
Just get a job.
Which is outside of where I live, there was a lady passed out, homeless lady, and as a result, the cause of action wasn't to help this person; it was to stand around and debate whose problem it should be. And I walk past and I go, you know, there's an ambulance in the petrol station across the road, right? Oh, well, you know, you got to call them though, right? No, you can go and talk to, like, tell them there's someone that needs help and just get them the fuck over here. That's where I think we're up to as far as, you know, the perspective on things, because like you say, there's this weird juxtaposition between people who perceive themselves to be good people and yet objectively, when presented with an opportunity to do something even remotely altruistic, even though I would argue what I did was that altruistic, someone needs help, ask for it. Didn't do anything more than that, just asked. But that becomes a debate. That becomes a thing of, well, whose problem is it, rather than taking it on themselves. That's where we're up to. And I find kind of what you're saying, that aspect of our social disposition quite disturbing, when we spend a lot of our time arguing about things, and yet when given the opportunity to either take a moral stand or even just do, like I say, not talk, do something.
Step over the line, do the action.
Get in the fucking game and do something.
That doesn't
people
mean,
are now,
just
well, hang
something.
on, I don't have to do that, surely. I don't have to be the one to do something. It's someone else's job.
Yeah, that is a thing I see a lot. And do you know what though? That attitude, seeing that a lot, made me very cynical for a while, and even to the point of almost slightly like nihilistic. But doing this job, you do realize that there are people that do.
Right.
There are, and they make so much more difference than 1,000 people chatting. You know what I mean? For every political debate that I see on the internet, I know loads of people just quietly getting on and helping, you know, running food banks, helping people out, doing the stuff, rather than the arguing or the praxis or the theory. Have you read your theory? Who cares? Like, you know, people are out, they are actually doing stuff, you know, they are. And again, I think that goes back to your question about, do we talk too much? Like, we talk too much to the point where we don't talk enough about the people doing the stuff, you know. Like, there's a weird thing in journalism specifically where we've become the talkers and not the ones that talk to the people that do. Like, it's almost like, well we're just talking now, and that's enough, that's the output. Well, what do we think of this, what do we think of that? Well, I don't know, like you know, with my work, we kind of, you know, we said Popular Front is for the people, and that wasn't even a politically charged thing. We didn't mean the people, we meant we literally talk to people. We go there and we present the war from the perspective of the ground. Not like, well, here's what the people on the ground are saying, but here's what the analysts think, and that's what's really you know, if someone is getting shot at and their house is getting bombed, I think they have a lot more what they say is a lot more relevant than what some analyst says. And sure, don't get me wrong, there's space for each part. There is space for each part. But at least the way I do things, I'm always a lot more interested in the more visceral thing. And I don't actually think the way I do it is the right way, or it's the good way, or it's revolutionary. It's not revolutionary at all. I mean, it's what old journalism was about. It's what the journalists that I learned about journalism through have always been doing and still do. And what I do is not that different to what they've been doing for a long time. I just do it in an independent, more maybe aesthetically modern and original, well, not even that original, but just like a different way for war reporting. But people are still doing it. And there is this thing where, unfortunately, I really feel like they're getting less of the pie, if you like, than the people that do just sit about talking. I mean, well, it's true. I mean, the podcasts that kind of do the best are the ones that people just sit about talking and that. But I guess that is podcasting. I mean, that's fine. It is talking, obviously. I don't mean it in that sense. I mean, like, sometimes it's just running on the treadmill, with the same thing over and over and over. Like, oh, that's the political debate podcast. And it's like, how much political debate can you have without talking to the people in the places that you're politically debating about? That you mentioned that Joe politics thing, and a lot of people are very, very angry with me about that. He doesn't get it. Someone was like, yeah, he's been tricked by the bourgeoisie to think that the working class can't understand Marx. I never said they can't understand it. I said it's not what people are trying to grab hold of to propel themselves forward in life right now. It just isn't. And then these people are so arrogant. They're like, well, if they did, then they'd be fine. It's just you can't even argue with that. You can't, man. You can't. It's like I said on the thing, it's a human centipede of ideas where it's like, I'll regurgitate it, you swallow it, you put it back out, and then we're all right, and he's the wrong one. And yeah, people are extremely angry about it, and people I know that are just normal that saw it, but like, you didn't say anything odd. Like, it was completely, it was pretty chill. I thought that as well. I thought it was kind of, I know one of the lads on there, Ollie, like, he's a friend of mine, the co-host. She stormed out afterwards. She didn't even speak to me. I was like, what the fuck? And I realized, like, actually, this is the listenership is, and there's nothing against that podcast, but the listenership is not an open debate. The listenership is like people that want those ideas fed back to them. You know what I mean? Now, I don't think that's how the podcast was meant to be. Like, Ollie, the guy that runs it, is a good lad. He's a friend of mine, and I know that he's very happy to have people that disagree. I just think that's how it is kind of plateaued out, maybe, and that's why people were mad that I had a wrong thought. But I'm not having some fucking media yuppie tell me that I haven't got a clue. I did that whole world, man. I was in that world for a while. I worked at Vice for like fucking 5 years, and I tried to even blend in with it. I really tried to refine my opinions and even my voice. I tried to really speak a lot clearer, and I'm very did I pronounce all my T's. And I did that for a while, and I really tried, and they still didn't fucking like you. And I just realized at one point, I was like, fuck this, man. I do my own thing, and now it's okay. I had to unlearn all of that behavior. And since I did, people are really, I don't know, they're a lot more interested in what we're doing, and they realize, like, oh, actually, it's normal. A lesson that I learned that was very interesting to me was, so I went on, what's his name? James English. I went on the James English podcast. I know he has a lot of headbangers on there, but he has a lot of interesting people on there as well. And his kind of remit is like, I'll talk to anyone, whatever. And I'm sure he has various agendas. I don't really know, but I'm not really that interested. And a lot of people, like media world people, I found out, everything gets back to me, man. Everything gets back to me. And people were like sneering, like, oh, can you believe he went on that podcast? For the first time, my friends where I live, who I grew up with, came up to me and were like, wow, you were on there, man. We're so happy to see you on there. That's so cool. That said a lot more to me than these sneering fucking metropolitan bubble media. And I thought, you lot sneer. You carry on, because my pals ain't listening to you, and they're the people that you think you're speaking up for. So I've really learned a lesson from that, and I thought we had quite a nice conversation. He seemed a nice enough fella to me. He speaks to people I wouldn't even fucking give the time of day to, but his business is his business, you know what I mean? I'm not going to tell him not to. I really don't understand that thing of telling people off, telling grown adults off all the time. Very odd. And it's just not something you would get away with anywhere but the media world. Do you know what I mean? Look, we're from the same area, man. You can't tell grown adults off where we're from. You know what I'm saying?
If you want to have an argument with someone about giving up a fucking seat on a train, you better be prepared to throw hands, because the person's going to debate you and then throw hands doing that shit.
Yeah,
it's not something you can just throw out as a suggestion.
And I think that's where, and I'm not trying to paint like this horrible rough and tumble lifestyle or anything like that. I had a very, I've had various issues in my life, but I had a good family. I come from a good family, and people that really helped me throughout my life, and I've been around a lot of good people. And the reality though is that there's a lot of volatility out there, there really is, and you have to learn to run with it. You can't run away from it or immediately castigate someone because they are of that style of communication.
So I have to ask you about that then, because that is one of the core problems I see in discourse, is that you mentioned there the sort of the tribalism element, the fact that they probably didn't just take issue with what you said. They mainly took issue with the fact that you disagreed with them.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, some people agreed, but some people really, a lot didn't. A lot didn't.
And that's
not disagree. They just didn't like. They didn't like it. They were like, he's stupid. Like,
but the point is though that you got to go right. You didn't like what I said. Okay, can I ask you a question? Me saying what I said, how can it affect you? My opinion can exist on its own, and so can yours. Why do you have to take an offence to a differing opinion? So, but you mentioned something there about angry? Toughening up. The idea that your opinion can exist, so can mine, and the prevailing opinion will be hopefully the one that has more logical sound, or at least makes a degree of sense, or whatever. Okay, sometimes it's just the prevailing opinion for whatever reason. My question is it even possible for journalists like yourself or people within the media to propagate that, or are we just now in a case where controversy is king and it is just, well, we need to generate conversation, and the easiest way to do it is to have two people that disagree and have everyone rally behind their respective candidate? Or is there a place for the kind of civil discourse where it can be a disagreement, but it can be, right, well, thank you very much for having that conversation. What do you all think? Not, we have two people that represent these two trails of thought. You must agree with one of them. That is it. Those are your choices.
I think it depends on what it is. I don't think there's any cover-all. I really don't think there's, like, you wouldn't sit there with Anders Breivik and be like, let's hear what he has to say. He like, he has put himself outside of having any respect. He doesn't deserve the time of day. That's the thing, like, free speech. Yeah, free speech is cool. People use free speech to limit other people's free speech, which then makes it not free speech at all. If you're preaching hate and you're saying, well, yeah, like, these kids should go and kill that and do this or whatever, and they're like, oh, well, can't believe he banned him, free speech. No, this guy is trying to stop people's lives or whatever. I think there's a very thin line, and I don't get me wrong, I do very much believe in, like, real free speech, but I feel like the 90% of the people that I see talking about that usually mean free speech for me and not for thee. They're always like right-wing headbangers or like Andrew Tate types, right, who are just the worst people. And they're like, oh, free speech, I'm so castigated, why has it happened to me? And then they'll be like, oh, look at this person, they're trans, they shouldn't exist. Hang on, wait, you want to basically take away someone's right to exist for how they feel differently in themselves? That's like an ultimate fascist idea, to take away someone's life or jail them or stop them being who they feel they are inside because you don't like it. But then you should be allowed to say you don't like it, sure, but you can't not be challenged on that. And you can't then think you're on this high horse of, well, they cut us off because we're free speech. Some people need to be cut off. I really think that they're allowed to have the decision, they're allowed to have the opinion, but when the opinion gets to the place where they're literally calling for someone else's free speech to be extinguished, that to me is no longer free speech. That's a call to arms.
It's pulling up the intellectual ladder in effect, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's wrong. And I think people that are on the other end of that should always be defended, especially when they're in the minority. And I feel sickened that people are hiding behind the shield of free speech when what they're doing is trying to push a hatred out into the world to get people hurt. And to me, it's in a weird place. But then the other issue is on the other side. Instead of trying to block free speech, people should use their free speech to really tear apart these people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we were having this conversation at my boxing gym the other day. Lad was saying, oh, well, I'm not saying, I'm not an Andrew Tate fan, but some of what he says makes sense.
Right.
And instead of going mad at him, I said, well, look, you're right. Some of what he does say does make sense because that's how he kind of hooks you in.
Yeah, that's what he's saying that makes sense. If you were a con artist, you would feed them a little bit of what is true first.
Feed them a bit, right?
That's when you take it off.
And what he's saying that makes sense is nothing revolutionary. Be a good guy, be a tough person, look after your friends. Every granddad ever has been telling their grandkids that. I said to him, I put it this way, I said, do you love your mum and your sisters? Yeah. I said, then you can't be a fucking Andrew Tate fan. Because what he thinks of women is what he thinks of your sister and what he thinks of your mother. And it was that simple. Right. And he was like, oh, yeah, actually, yeah. I was like, this guy is sex trafficked women. He thinks women should be like under lock and key. He wants to control their lives. If that's your sister, He said, yeah, I'd knock his head off. Yeah, exactly, you would, and that's the right thing to do. So you don't allow a man to control a woman like that. So then why are you listening to this fella? And he said, yeah, I never really thought about that. But if you come from the other direction, what I would see the media would do, like, scumbag, scumbag, what do you mean he's got a good point? Cancel, cancel. You're going to push that kid further into that neurotic nonsense. And I don't think I think both sides, I think it's bipartisan. I think both sides kind of end up doing this kind of madness.
100% agreed on that. Yeah.
It's not really, and I'm not a centrist. I'm not on that. Well, I like a bit of this and a bit of that. That's fine, but I think you end up falling down for everything in that sense. But I just think people need to relax. And what you said, like, should the media do this? I think the media's job is to just go look at this in context. I don't really think
to be the intellectual arbiter of sorts, not on a morality basis, but certainly on an information. This is true. This is fact. I'm presenting it to you for your consideration. That is it. I'm not here to tell you necessarily how to feel about it, but I'm here to tell you this is what happened, and here's as much of the context as we can humanly present.
Why? Yeah. But I don't, that's to say, that again, and not to contradict myself, but I don't think you should be completely heartless and mechanical and objective about it. That is more dishonest to me.
Agreed.
Real honesty is not just the fact, it's the human element to that, because we're all humans and we all digest the information not as soulless mechanical ghouls, but as human beings. So I don't really think that it should be put out into the world completely without any feeling. I actually want to know what a reporter feels about a certain thing. I don't want them to tell me if they're bad or good. That's irrelevant. I want to know what they felt or something like that, or have some fucking gravel in what they're saying, Here's some I don't know, Azerbaijan or something. Don't just be like, yeah, well, this is a brutally authoritarian regime. It's just an example, but they are. I want to know about that. That's not an opinion. So that's an opinion. That is not an opinion. If you look at what they do, it's literally a definition. You know what I'm saying? I think you do have to have some heart and some, stand up for yourself in what you're saying to make people pay attention to. But I don't think you then need to go like this good, this bad. But I do think, I don't know, man. I mean, maybe I'm contradicting myself, but again, I'm happy to be contradicted and wrong. And I'm not that smart. I'm not the arbiter of truth. I'm a reporter that believes in what I believe in. And I do think we need to remember reporters are human, and I do think the reporters ourselves have some responsibility in removing that element. And I do understand why then people are like, oh, look at the reporters, they're wrong here or they're wrong there or they're pushing an agenda. Often I think that, we're just different people with different ideas. And I think this idea that reporting and journalism is a monolith, which sometimes journalism tries to present with the journalistic ethics, which, it varies from person to person, as does anything. The truth varies from person to person sometimes in what they believe. So it's almost like it's more complicated than we try to make out. And I think we should stop trying to wear the hat of it's okay, we choose this role to disseminate the info and tell people and put it into context, but we shouldn't wear the hat of we're better than you and we can't be, you can't say anything against that. I know reporters that will kind of feel like, no, war reporters especially, that think they're moral modern day heroes. We're not, man. It's a job. It's a very interesting job. I think it's a very important job, but you should never think that you're somehow above the person that reads what you're putting out or listens or watches. That's where I feel like there's a disconnect. You should never forget that you're no better than the person that's reading or watching or listening to what you've put out in the world. You put it out for them. Journalism shouldn't be for other journalists. It should be for everybody,
A few moments later.
Accidentally missed a whole convo because I forgot to hit record.
Oh, I do have that sometimes with the old, again, the headphones thing now. At least I get a little light here that says it's actually picking up the fucking audio. That used to haunt my dreams when I started this. I was like, shit, I can't ask someone for an hour of their time when they're busy and then not record the fucking show. So never mind. But yeah, no. Coming back to the point, the culture you have to contend with. I guess the question I have, as far as your participation in it, as much as you have to be, how do you navigate trying to engage people? Because ultimately, you want people to read your journalism. You want people to see what you're reporting. Yeah. But you also then don't want to become an antagonist to some people or a martyr to other people who then hold you up, because you you don't strike me as the kind of person that's doing it for the clicks, for the likes, for the fame that comes from it. You're looking at your history, you forged your own path because you have your own beliefs and you have your own perspective of the world that you want to try and illuminate. How do you navigate that particular dichotomy of not letting you become the focus rather than what you're trying to cover?
Well, I mean, in some ways, I am the focus. I'm the kind of the reporter on the screen in my stuff that I do. But I like that. I like doing that. I like seeing myself do interesting stuff. There's some level of like ego to it, definitely. And I think anyone that does this kind of journalism and says there isn't is just lying. But the reason is because I feel like I know how to convey what I feel like I want to convey. And for some reason, I have this feeling in me, always have my whole life, where I want to create things and say like, and if I create something, I want everyone to see it. I don't want to gatekeep it into a niche industry. I want it to be, I really don't. The way it's gone in media if it has to be for everybody, it has to be watered down. And I really don't think that. I think the opposite is true. I think it needs to be very truthful and very like, if there's a hardcore situation, it has to be presented like that. And I think anything else is dishonest. Like some people don't like the popular front editing style. Oh, you've put this fast music to a riot, and I'm like, do you know what it feels like to be in a riot? No, but I want you watching what we do to feel as close as you can without being there. And I feel like the way we do that is this style of editing, this fast pace, and we appeal to all our audience are so young. Our audience are very young, which is, you're talking like 18 to like 30 is our main kind of audience. And honestly, it's a mix of all different people. And that's very hard to get in journalism. Even when I used to work at Vice, they were struggling to even hit that demographic. We've hit it just without even really. We didn't try to hit those young people. We knew I'm not old, I'm 33, but I'm not like young. And we just made it, it's got to be cool. It's got to be interesting these days. That's what we're with. It's not enough to just be informative. It's not enough to just be good. It has to really capture the person. And we're in a time of very, very low levels of concentration, and that's not because it's the kids because they're on TikTok. The kids have been fed a disease by the people, by the multi-billion-dollar companies that are literally investing their money. This isn't a conspiracy, they've said it themselves. They're investing their money in how to hook young people onto a social media platform. Retention, right? So we're in that world. So how do you then compete with that? You don't compete with it by crying and going against it, but I'm not going to do that. You compete by, in my opinion, getting in that world, running in that lane, but doing it your own way, So people will see our stuff. A lot of people fuck with our stuff and they didn't even know what we're about. They go, oh, I saw this video, it looked really fucking cool. I was like, what's that? Then they watch it. They don't even realize, wow, there you go. You've just learned something you didn't know. And I think that's the way to do it. I don't think it's not enough to expect an audience. Well, they should listen because it's important. This isn't the time of 3 channels and no internet. It's just not that. And what is important to someone is important to someone else is not important. So, you have to have this way of doing things. And yeah, I did kind of forge my own path, but that's just because I felt like my ideas were right. Not that anyone else's were wrong, but I was like, I have this theory of how we can do things. I think we can do it this way, and I think it will work within my industry of, conflict reporting. And I was told, don't be ridiculous. How can you do that? That ain't gonna work. That's, anyway, I knew it would. I said, no, it will. So I just had to do it myself, and I felt like I tried to get, do it I always kind of did my own thing, even at Vice. Don't get me wrong, Vice were very like, they weren't controlling or anything like that. They kind of let you go, but you had to sit, you had to fit a certain style and fit a certain thing, and that had its own various issues. But it was a cool place to learn. And I guess when I started my own thing, I was like, right, now I'm ready. I've learned all the practical stuff that I needed from there. And now I've got that under my belt and the experience, and people already trust me because I know I've been to this war and that war. Now I'm going to launch my own thing with all of that experience, but then my own ideas and bring it into it. And thank God it was a success. We're like the fastest growing conflict reporting platform in the world by a fucking mile, and I'm very proud of that. But I think it's nothing. it's not that special what I did. You know, it really isn't. It's not that original. It's not that crazy. You know, I mean, most of my inspirations are like, I got a lot of my inspirations from like, oh shit, sorry, what happened there? From what was I saying? Yeah, so sorry. Like a lot of my inspirations are from like other things that people really created. You know, like skate videos. I grew up like when I was about 11, 12. I was really into skateboarding. You know, I got pretty good. I really wish I never quit, but I got pretty good. And me and my friends were out filming. You know, I remember I used to like kind of hide, you know, quickly pinch off my granddad's like digital camera. I think he probably knew I was taking it, even though he's like, "Don't be taking that out." But I take it out, and you know, we'd film all these mad things, and we'd be skating, and we were kind of emulating what we already saw out there. And then through years of that, I guess that was the style I always liked, and I just kind of reincorporated it into what we're doing. But honestly, I don't. It's really original. I don't want to. I think it is in some ways, but I don't think. My point is that if I could do it, anyone could do it. And there's loads of cool things out there that people are actually doing right now. Like there's a lot of doomerish vibes where people are like, oh, the media's fucked, we're all fucked, man. There's loads of people doing very cool stuff right now. It's just people don't look for it, they don't search for it, they just spend too much time, you know, swiping the same thing.
Right,
And
because that's,
you know,
that's part of the point. Yeah, 100%. Because what I make the point of with things like TikTok and Reels and stuff like that, I understand it's a very popular way to consume information these days, but I also counter with the idea that it's a time saver by saying, yeah, but if you spend an hour on TikTok or any of these things, how much of it do you actually remember? And more to the point, how much of it did you actually like? Versus if you actually look for what you're trying to find, you might have to sift through a couple of examples. Now, that then takes you 20 minutes. How much of the time has actually been wasted in that context? And I put the point to them, it's like, right, it's not a time saver, it's just removing the last barrier to entry, which is the choice. It's just putting it to you and then saying, you sift through it until you find something. It's actually making you work harder, but the point is, in its own way, it's limiting, because then it's all being fed to you rather than what you're saying, which is, look, there's plenty of examples, but you've got to at least engage. You've got to look for the examples and be aware of what the alternatives are. And that's tricky in an age, like you say, where it's difficult to you don't say this, sorry, but I do make this point quite frequently, where it's difficult to compete with something that people have a wrong perception of. Like, they've not thought about it in that way. They've thought about it in the tactile way rather than the sort of more pragmatic way. So the question then becomes, you've been successful. You've managed to forge a path. And I appreciate what you're saying, which you've taken ideas and that you've observed, but you've still picked successful ideas. It still required you to know that looks good or that will work. That required skill to put together. So how do you look at that? How do you gauge your own success, and how do you choose how to continue to maintain and improve and grow from here, given all those things?
Oh, that's a really good question, and it's actually something that I kind of pride ourselves on it at Popular Front. Like we don't let it get stale, you know. So when we first came out, vaporwave was like very like the thing at the time, and I love vaporwave, not just the music, not just the style, the kind of the philosophy behind it. I won't bore people with that, but there's a great book called Babbling Corpse, The Commodification of Ghosts, which sounds like a mouthful, but it's basically about the idea of where vaporwave came from, kind of recycling mainstream mainstays and making something very original out of it, you know. And I just love that, and we started using it a lot in what we did. That's how we kind of got actually separated ourselves. People were like, what? They're war on conflict, but they're using like vaporwave aesthetics like that, you know. At the time it was like, whoa. And then I noticed everybody start copying us, and they just were surface level. And I'm not being like, oh, I'm so deep. I'm a nerd. That's what it is. I'm not so deep, but I'm a nerd, and I like to really get into stuff, you know. So I was like, I've seen these other people was copying it, but just kind of surface level. I don't think they really, which is fine, completely fine, you know. Like I always look at it as the idea that some people think every tattoo has to mean something. I think that no, not at all. I think if you want to have something cool in your body and you like the look of it, that's fine. And so it's, you know, I'm not one of these gatekeepers, but I just felt like, okay, well, we did this not just for the aesthetic reasons, and then they're copying it. So what do we do? Moan? No, they're not copying, but they're just, some of them were, to be honest, really were. But someone would be inspired or whatever. And I said, well, okay, then we've got to come up with something new, something else. You know what I mean? So then we noticed like funk, like that kind of music. I mean, there was many different stages in between that. We actually started using like hard bass, Eastern European street vibes, which has always been a part of our aesthetic, but we really lent into that. We had like that. And then we saw like funk was like a thing. And honest to God, I mean, definitely didn't come up with it first, but we were some of the first people to use like that kind of music, that kind of style within the editing. Now that's every war video, you know. I'm not saying they got that from us, but I definitely think we're like definitely some of the feet standing on that platform when that happened. You know, we definitely honed a lot of that. And I then was like, okay, so now we have to do something else. And basically, we're always trying to come up with something else, different style, even if it's tweaked a little bit. Like at the start, it was very black and pink. Now it's black and yellow, which sounds like, oh, who cares? But to me, like I said, I'm such a nerd. That's really important. Very specific details. Attention to detail is very important. And a lot of the things that inspire us and are in our docs, and there's a reason behind it, no one else will know, you know, but it's just a very little detail that someone will, you know, they'll go, did you use that sample in that because it means this? Yeah. And they're like, oh, I thought so. Like, yeah. Like, you know, I really love that kind of almost like these esoteric details. And I think that's what makes up the DNA of something. It's not just, oh, we need a good designer. It's not, you need to have like inspirations coming from somewhere. And sorry, I know this is a long way of explaining it, and I really, really don't want it to sound like, oh, I'm such a creative genius, because I'm not. But I have my ideas and I like things, and I really research them. I'm into all sorts of different things. And when you put that into something and hone it into a specific style, it can't die. It can't, you know, it's because it's like you've created, well, it can die if you let it go stale, actually, that's a lie. But it should keep growing. If you stay interested, you stay curious, which I do. And it's not because, oh, that's how we've got to grow. I just am that way. And, you know, I mean, like yourself, like it's easy. I was thinking back to that TikTok thing when you were saying that, you're making me think, and we're people interested in media, right? We like to create things. Clearly, you're doing this, you reach out to me, you know, that's a step to reach out to someone like, hey, I want you on this. Like, it's actually kind of like a big deal, actually. And because it's very easy to just do nothing, actually, you know, you can just do nothing. That's easier.
It was fucking nerve-wracking for people watching to reach out to Jake, considering that I was such blown away by his performance on the show, and then looking into his history and going, oh wow, he's a big deal. He'll never respond.
I didn't mean that about myself. I just meant like to even reach out to anyone. Like, I have it as well, you know, like, but you have to do it. It's like I said, it's easier to be dormant and do nothing. 100%. But even so, we're interested in that, right? Your average person that isn't, or maybe they are, I think everyone is in some way interested in like creative stuff, but like if they're not, you know, actively engaged in it, which is completely fine. Like, the world would be mental if everybody wanted to be like a creator, you know what I mean? Nothing would get done. You know what I mean? Nothing of true relevance would get done. But you know, I think the most important people in society are definitely not the creators by any stretch. They're the fucking bin men and the bus drivers. So I'm not saying like we're the ones. My point is, we're already interested in this, right? So we think, I want to see something new, I want to see something new. It must be very difficult if you're not, or if you've just got too much time to having to do other things. And I do understand how the TikTok, the Insta, whatever, will fill that very small gap. And it's sad and it's unfortunate, and I don't know how to combat it, that those platforms have filled that gap for people and made them then addicted. You know what I mean? So how do you then... I'm going on about all this shit. I've just got, oh yeah, I'm inspired by all this fucking weird esoteric shit. I haven't got time for that. Most people don't have time for that. And it's, you know what I mean? And it's like, to be honest, I never had time for it anyway. I just did it anyway. Like, don't get me wrong, I didn't come from money, man. I worked every job you can think of before I got to this point. So it's not like I just always had this time to chill out and paint. It wasn't that at all. I was scraping and saving. But now that it's at that point, and now that I've had that inclination to do it, yeah, okay, well, that's me. I've had all these ideas. But it must be difficult if you just don't have the time where you I don't know, do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're not in that, you don't have, like, I have people sending me cool stuff. My friends are, you like this, Jake, check this out. Like, a friend of mine the other day, I was talking to her about like some weird like occult stuff and like technology, and she was like, I know this book called Technosis. It's kind of mental, but she was like, you'll like it. Got it, loved it, great. How the hell else am I ever gonna find out about that thing? It's not, it's, you know what I mean? It's like I'm already in that circuit. So I don't know how you then, how else do you get hold of that stuff otherwise? You know, you're just getting regurgitated. Like, my point is, you can't blame not that you are, but you can't blame the people that are at the receiving end of it. You know what I mean? They're just getting it, and there's often no other alternative, and it's very difficult to enter this space with something new and original when people are basically just being fed whatever they're getting fed in the 10 minutes. And to be honest, the best thing people want is a laugh. And I think that's beautiful, actually. You know, like sometimes, I can't remember was it, anyway, there was some philosopher, it might have been Zizek, was talking about memes and that. And no, it wasn't him. Anyway, someone was really down on the memes. Oh, people just share memes. I thought, man, that's a really human thing to be sharing memes because you want to laugh. Like, you know, you want to have a funny thing and communicate a very comedic thing very quickly. And I don't necessarily think that's bad. I just think the scrolling is bad. The arguing on the internet is bad. The constant fascination and thinking that is the real world is bad. You know, it's not healthy at all. Maybe it's not bad, but it's not healthy to see. And you know, we're seeing it already. I mean, young men, young women, both struggle. I don't envy them. You know, I don't envy the way of the world they're growing up in. They're seeing like beautiful bodies all the fucking time. You got young lads taking steroids at like 15 because they think they have to be this way. Yeah, man, it's difficult. I mean, I've lost my point, but, you know, it's a weird point. I mean,
I think a lot of this is attributable to the pace of life. You can't blame people for wanting to disseminate information as quickly as possible, to digest it as quickly as possible, and to have a narrative that is as simply understood as possible when they're just trying to fucking survive. If you're having to work 2 jobs to pay your current bills, do you really have time to watch a hour documentary on something when it can be condensed into 60 seconds where they go, have you seen this thing? So-and-so says this, so-and-so says this. Leave us your thoughts in the comments.
Absolutely.
It's not a better alternative, but it is the alternative.
It is, yeah. It's almost not even the alternative. It's like the only thing now, because like you just said, that's often left out with a conversation. Oh, the people wasting their time doing it. Man, people don't have time. You know, and it's not like, oh, well, if they don't have time, they shouldn't go on this thing. It's like, no, that's not, you can't, like when someone is struggling so much, you can't then remove the one, like 20 minutes of respite they get, you know, scrolling while they're having a shit or whatever. You can't then take that away from them. I remember reading an amazing article years back, I must find it, about how it's so dehumanizing to stop homeless people from having cigarettes. And it was, I won't even try to explain it because it was so well said. And it was like, yeah, you can't then remove that last thing from that person. Basically, the most human thing of just having 5 minutes to yourself, you can't take that from them. So you can't do that. But then how do you, like you said, how do you, I mean, the fact they even want to maybe look at something more than a cat meme is, you know, commendable in itself. I certainly remember when I was working like factory work and stuff like that, I think if I'd have had the options of TikTok and that back then, maybe I probably wouldn't have, you know, consumed what I did consume, because I had to really make time to read books and do whatever. And I don't know, man, it is, I don't really have an answer for it. It's very tricky, and I don't want to be totally down about it either, because there's also very, you know, and a lot of the success of Popular Front has come through our success on social media. We use social media kind of as a tool to advertise what we're doing and put stuff out there, and we use it as a news thing, you know, but so for us, it's been very useful, although now we're heavily censored on everything, so it's becoming less useful, but that's how it is. But it's not necessarily bad. I've found some of the best artists ever on like social medias, and I've found team members that now work with us all the time who are now friends through social media. You know, like one of our guys, Adam Doyle, he goes by the handle Spice Bag, and anyone in Ireland will know him. Like, he's massive there now. And you know, he hit me up when he was like a student, and he was like, yo, like, I love Popular Front, I'm in graphics, I've made this, what do you think? And I was like, that's cool. He's like, cool, like, I know you don't have any money, I don't have any money, but like maybe we'll work together. And you know, and then as Popular Front did make money, then he made money, you know. And it was like, that's beautiful, and that's through the social media. So I don't be completely down on it. I just wish
every generation has it though, dude. Like
every generation.
Like, again, I know you were busy reading books. I was on MSN for fucking 5 hours a night, just saying hey, shit, lol, and sharing my favorite downloaded music from someone, and then putting it in my fucking banner. Like, that's not a good waste of time.
To Lemon Party, I used to love doing that. Yeah, check out this website, lemonparty.com. They're like, what the fuck? It's just like, yeah.
It was Bebo, and it was fuck. There was another one. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head, but
Pixo was one. Yeah.
But that's
no,
the point.
I mean,
It's like that was that generation's. Like we wasted. That wasn't time. Like that's not time I can get back and transfer into something else. But it's how we shared information. It's how we shared discourse.
It formed me. It really formed me though, a lot of it. Do you know what though, I will say? There is a difference, because back then that was what I call like the old internet, the Wild West internet, where the internet was like this, right? And you could go everywhere. The internet is even bigger now. It's still like this, but it's concentrated here. I know people that don't use anything else but the social media. They don't go on website. They don't fucking go anywhere. They barely go on Wikipedia. Back in the day, there was barely even search engines were pretty shit. You know what I mean? And you could find and even now search engines are fucking censored or programmed in a way where it will always help the advertiser, you know? So everything's ring fenced now. The whole thing's ring fenced. So I do think we had a better time of it you could find out that nothing was censored either. You know, there are niche communities now that you can't thrive on Instagram because they get removed. So it's because they haven't the community guidelines, which 90% of the time just means it's not advertiser friendly. So yes. it's a tricky one, man. I get what you're saying, but we weren't outside ignoring people from scrowling. Now, I don't have any fucking friends like that because I don't want to be around people like that, but I see it all the time, you know? Like, I was talking to a friend the other day, we were out for lunch, and she's saying, look what I was doing. I was like, a couple behind us, young couple, whole thing's on the phone, man, on the phone. And I was like, that's dangerous. That's dangerous. When you're substituting human interaction, but whilst you're actually there for the scrolling, that's not healthy. Never.
In the midst of a three-way conversation that happens routinely in my world, dude, where you'll be talking and they'll check their phones while you're talking, and you go,
yeah. And I'm very lucky, man. I don't know. I don't have it around me so much. I have seen it and I have come across it, but generally it's not really affecting me too much. But I might get it every so often. You'll be like, what's that? Oh shit, is that important? No. I'm talking like people that are like, yeah. Right. It's so rude. It's very rude. Bro.
But it is what it is to a certain degree. Let me ask you one last question, and then you can get back to covering the actual real world and doing the absolutely fucking amazing work that you do.
Thanks, man.
It's dude. I've done a deep dive into your stuff since. This
camera is so shit.
That's all right. It's making you look more mysterious and alluring.
It's censoring me.
It's artistic license the camera's taking to enhance the interview and therefore appease the mighty algorithm. I have a question, and it's probably a little bit of a self-indulgent one. But considering everything in the body of work that you've put together and everything you've accomplished so far, is there anything you want to cover more of that you think you might be inhibited from covering, either in the way you want to cover it, or just because of any tacit restrictions that might make it just not tenable to cover for one reason or another? But time, money, and inhibitions notwithstanding, what would you want to cover more of?
Well, yes, and to be honest, I want to do a lot less war and a lot more. I mean, I don't just cover war, to be honest. I mean, I never know how to describe it. So it's not what you folks will say, conflict and underground activity. Like I'm very interested in the darker aspects of just life, the world. Whether that be criminal networks or strange internet rabbit holes, mysteries, whatever. I'm very interested in stuff like that. And I have, over the last couple of years, I've been venturing into. I've always been in doing that stuff, but I've ventured into it a lot more recently. I've very, very heavily focused on war for most of my kind of career in some ways, but I've always been doing it. But now I'm doing a lot more of it, and it's funny you ask that because I have been planning a series that I'm gonna make myself. And the way we've described it, me and one of my guys from my team, a couple of us are going to make and do it. It's going to be the best shit ever. We've described it as in the deck that we've written up as think of Weird Weekends and Wicker's World on steroids. Like we want it that. We're going to call it Away Days, and the idea is we just go. It's journalism, but it's from a, it's basically, what we want to do is reinvent the old. Back in the 90s, you had this stuff, right? You had like I said, Weird Weekends. Oh, Louis Theroux goes and spends a weekend with some like fringes of society you don't hear about, right? But we want to do that for the modern era. We want to do it in the way that I do it. We want to, for example, I don't really want to talk too much about what we got because we've got access to stuff that we might lose. But, we're gonna well, one I can talk about, there's like a gang in Brazil. They're in charge of their favela, which, not a new story, but basically the government has kind of said to them, you know what, you be the fucking government. And the police aren't even in there now. And now this gang is having to literally learn how to be a government. Yeah. And like people ring them up like, someone stole my bike, and some 18-year-old comes down and shoots at somebody's knees, and we want to spend a week with these people and find out, how does this work? Because okay, on the outside, oh, these bad kids with guns, yeah, sure, I'm sure they're bad kids. I'm no fan of like, a community being filled up with drugs, but there's a lot more to it than that, so we want to get behind these things and learn the characters behind them and find out what's going on there. And there's some other stuff we're gonna do. There's a real serious, some of the stuff, like, you'll find out info. Some of the stuff, no one has done it before, and some of the stuff, yeah, people have done it before, but they ain't gonna do it like us. I really believe that. And there's a new drug in America called Trank. This is like a different episode we're gonna do, and there's a whole community. It's like crocodile. I don't know if you remember that from the Vice days. It rots your flesh. Within a month of taking it, you can see your bones, you can see through the arm. It's crazy. So a lot of the homeless people in Philadelphia are dying from it, and so we're gonna spend a week with them. Not necessarily just with them, but like there's a lot of like aid crews that are helping them and find out, where did this come from? Why are people mixing weird chemicals? Where's the heroin gone? Where's the OxyContin gone? And how do they get like that? Mostly the doctor. You know what I mean? Like, just really get under the skin and get into hardcore, crazy, rough, harsh, sometimes funny aspects of the fringes of society, and just present it unfiltered in the way that we do our stuff. Just be like, hey, this is happening. Here's the people behind it. We're right in the thick of it. That's the idea as well. We're right in the thick of it. We're not I've never been one to be on the sidelines. We're right in the middle of it. Here it is, and present it to the world like that. And I spoke to a few TV companies, and they liked it, and and every single one wanted to water it down or change the direction. And our thing is like, no, absolutely not. It will not be watered down. You will not water down something like that, and we won't bend that way. So yeah, I'm gonna fund the pilot myself. Like, we've got the first episode. It's gonna be mad. It's gonna be mad, actually. People will be very surprised. And we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna maybe try and get a funder or maybe a Kickstarter or something like that. But that's what I'm focusing on now. That's how we're going forward. Not to say that I'm not still doing all the Popular Front stuff. Popular Front is going full speed. In fact, like, through that will help Popular Front as well. We're doing all different things. We've got a few other things planned. That's going great. Where it's going up and up and up. But yeah, that, in terms of, like, to answer your question, yeah, that's what we want to do next. It's been a thing on my mind when people ask me this question. It's always been that. And this last year, I've been like, fuck it, man. Let's just do it. Like, let's work it out. Let's put money aside. I've got my guys that have been with me from like day one, and they're like, yeah, forget the money. We'll work that out afterwards. Let's go and do it. We'll pay for our own flights. We'll all do our thing. We'll stay in. We'll live in a gutter for a week if we have to. Like, we'll just do it. We'll get it done. And then once it's done, it's done. Then we'll work everything else out. So we're going to do it like that. We're going to go back to like the old school, like, rag and tag way we did things before. We've always kept it that way, but we've tried to make things a little bit, I don't know, we try to professionalize things, which is good, also a good thing to do, but certain things is just, it costs a hell of a lot of money to make documentaries, basically. Not as much as commissioning editors make out, not as much as mainstream TV makes out, but it does cost a lot of money. And so we're going to work out a way of doing it. But yeah, man, that's what we're going to do. And another thing I would like to do is I would love to have, like, I don't know if you ever remember this, but back in the day they had like video magazines. Like, when we were coming up, it was like a video magazine show. I mean, it's they still exist, but like MTV would do them, like, I mean, Jackass was kind of a video magazine. You got a bit of skating, a bit of madness. Yeah. Not that I want to do stunt ring, but I want to bring a cultural thing like that together as well, where it's not just me, it's all different people and like different, just like, like a series like that with cool, I don't know, graphics in between, like just something old school, something different, but that start again. But again, it's money. I got to start playing the lottery. Popular Front does well to put itself out there, but it's fucking expensive. We make a loss of around £5,000 to £15,000 every doc we make, a loss. So because we can't monetize on YouTube, they banned us monetizing. So, but we do all right on the Patreon. We got a good community on the Patreon. We offer a lot of free. We offer a lot of paywall stuff there, which people pay for, which it works out nice. We sell a lot of merchandise, a lot of t-shirts. We put a lot of thought into that. It's not just fucking spring. It's not that. It's like proper. Like, we try to kind of model it on the way Palace does things, like a proper clothing brand. But You know, we like there's no guns on our stuff. You know, there's no like cringe stuff. It's all like we try and do it proper. So that's making us money, and believe it or not, like we got to the point where like t-shirts are funding documentaries, which I think is a cool way of doing things. But something's got to give. We can't keep going at this pace. But hopefully this will be the thing that breaks through. I hope, or I go bankrupt.
I don't think you'd accept that based on the content of the interview.
Man, I've been broke like 90% of my life, and I always have this feeling of I lived through that. I can go back to it if I have to. You can't be scared of losing. You know what I mean? You can't be scared of losing.
2 hours later.
And there you have it. That was my interview with Jake. And to say I was blown away by the content and the delivery of his sentiments, thoughts, and insight is, to say the least. And here's the crazy thing. Didn't even ask him any of the questions I pre-prepared. That's how good he is at answering questions off the top of his head. So I will work diligently in my best to try and maybe entice him to come back. But in the meantime, we have some business to conduct, because he had to leave before I was able to do the most important thing of any podcast, which is plugs. Jake is available via 4 main means. His platform, Popular Front, is on www.popularfront.co. That's very important. Not .com, not .co.uk, .co. If you want to check out some of his work as part of his platform. He also has a personal website, www.jakehanrahan.com, where you can see his entire body of work stretching back to his Vice days and beyond. And indeed, there's a lot of video archives and indeed a lot of information about his upcoming projects. He's also available on Instagram and on Twitter as Jake_Hanrahan. So by all means, feel free to give him a follow to keep abreast of every update, every news story, every project that he's going to be working on. And trust me when I say, considering the very little we were able to delve into on this interview, I am boundless in my excitement for everything that he's about to do, because he just has one of the most unique outlooks on the world, and yet so relatable to someone like me, and I'm sure to a lot of you. So I want to thank him again for taking the time to appear, since I didn't have the time to thank him in person before he had to go, because again, he is an exceptionally busy individual, and I am blown away that he would take the time to talk to this. I'm sure you as well are grateful, because that was incredible. I'm sad that I only got an hour, but I'll be honest, I was only expecting like maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops, and he gave us an hour. What a fucking guy. So, thank you all for watching this edition of the Halcyon Show. Like I said, please be sure to go and subscribe and check out Jake's work. But in the meantime, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel itself. We're on the road to 500 subscribers now, so I'm really trying to push as much as I can. So please help and support me in any way I can, so I can continue to produce these kinds of interviews. And better still, let's get some live ones through the door. I think that would be good, wouldn't it? In the meantime, I hope you're taking care of yourselves out there. I know our conversation leaned dark sometimes and pragmatic at others, but I genuinely hope that you're all taking care of yourselves. And I'll see you on the next episode of The Halcyon Show.